Alright, let's look at some ways to make our model look even better. So an easy way is to just render it in Final Quality RenderWorks. You immediately start seeing some shadows. Anything that has a texture, the texture shows up well. The glass shows reflection. If I replaced this with a polished, let's see if we can find a polished metal. Let me switch to top plan here. And I'll drop a polished surface on there and re-render it in Final Quality RenderWorks. I see reflections. Everything looks pretty good. And RenderWorks has some pretty basic default ambient lighting that it includes in its render style, so that you see some shadows, you see some definition. This looks pretty good. Certainly if you choose a RenderWorks style, if we go interior fast, this will take a while. You can see the points. Back in the day, this used to take hours. But this has some lighting settings that for the background, some interior stuff. But you can see I lose a lot of definition. This is too much light in here. I'm going to go back to Final Quality RenderWorks. We'll save some of those RenderWorks styles for the advanced CAD class if there ever is one. But what I want to talk about is how to add some lighting, some light tools. So if you go to the tool sets and choose visualization, there's a light tool. And you get to choose what kind of light it is, a spotlight or a point light, a spotlight, and some custom light modes. And you can put in a directional light mode. So this is more like sunshine, where you can put direction light in and have one light source coming from one direction. I'm going to choose point light first. And you activate the tool, and then you can place the light object. You can determine how high off the ground it is. So if you want this to be like a ceiling light or a light source that we're on a ceiling, this isn't really a light fixture, it's just a light source. You know, and this was an 8-foot ceiling, I can put in 8 feet. And there's my little light source. I'll render this in fast RenderWorks so we can see some changes. And there I have a light source. Notice that where my light source is lighter. My area over here is a little bit darker, but this creates a light as though this were a light fixture or a light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I can change its brightness, make it a little dimmer, a little brighter. I can give the light a color if I want. I'll keep ours a white light. I can choose to have it cast shadows, soft shadows, a lit fog, sort of softens the light. And you can see the more effects I give to it, the longer it can take to render. Suddenly my file is becoming huge. So these lighting options are things you want to set at the very end of your drawing to see what it looks like. Otherwise, you can sit here forever. You know, go make yourself a cup of coffee. This is the lit fog. This can take quite a while, depending on the age and stage and memory of your computer. And you can't really, once it starts rendering, you just have to kind of sit back and wait. You can't interrupt it. So there's our rendering. It's still rendering. You can assign it to a class. And notice I'm still, while it's rendering, and this is actually pretty fast, you can change the type of light. So when you place the light, you can choose the type of light right here in the mode bar, but you can always change it after the fact using the Object Info palette. So first of all, I'm going to turn off the lit fog, have it re-render, but that didn't take very much time at all in comparison. But I can change this to a spotlight. And I can aim that spotlight a little bit. I can use Object Info Palette, and I can move it around using Pan, and I can tilt it. So Pan kind of moves it around the XY, and Tilt moves it kind of along the Z. I find these controls to be kind of frustrating. But notice I can aim that pool of light in different locations. I can also double click on the object using my selection cursor. And let me switch to a different view. It's got a select this one here. It's got a handle on the light source, so I can actually take that handle and aim it where I want it to aim. So I can reposition that. Boy, it's not enjoying this at all. I can reposition that light. I can aim it into another part of my drawing to reposition that pool of light. I can change it from a spotlight to a custom light if I had some lighting options here. We don't. That's more advanced stuff. So we're mostly going to look at directional, spot, and custom. Let's move directional. And there's a directional light where it's more a general light source, but I can rotate it around various axes. And this one's still a little fussy, but at least you get some hemispheres, I guess, to follow. So depending on where you grab it, you can see if you grab it around the equator, you can rotate it around its equator, like so. Or if I want to go up and over the poles, depending on where you grab it and which handle you grab. If you grab the handle that's right on the light source, you can go up and over the equator. This is actually pretty easy to use. So this is the one I use a lot rather than trying to deal with the spot or the custom. But notice as I reposition, the light is updated. So you get some really nice effects. I'll go back to a spotlight. What's nice about the spotlight, not the spotlight, the point light, there we go, is you can position it, for instance, if you wanted to show some under cabinet lighting, you could place it under some cabinets. So I'll move it down under the cabinet and place it under my upper cabinet. Again, if I knew the Z, I could place it by the Z. So if my upper cabinets are at 54, I could place this at like 50 inches. And when I render, I'll go fast render works. I could show a client what that under cabinet lighting might look like. If I do a final quality render works, my light source looks even better. If I select it, again, I can change its brightness. What I like too is the distance fall off. I like to choose this one as realistic. And notice this is more what the light will actually look like. So as the light gets farther away from the object, it falls off, it decreases. So I can actually show what the pool of light might look like on my counter. Again, I can change this to a directional light, some other kind of light, but you can create some really nice lighting effects. When you're in a design layer, the little light object shows up, but if I were to export this or create a viewport, I'll just create a new sheet layer. I'm not going to name it here or anything. But when I update my viewport, I get all that great light, but the light object doesn't render. So you can really create some dramatic effects. Obviously, I'd need some more light in here to show the detail on the counter, so I might go back to my design layer and add some lighting. I also have a few lighting options here, but this is really just the indirect lighting. So if I want to have a little bit of ambient lighting inside, I can do normal number of bounces. This is the light rays bouncing off the surface. Usually 2 bounces looks pretty good. Interior, 4 bounces, you get a really bright light. It's light bouncing off 4 surfaces, but this takes forever to render. So let's see what normal 2 bounces might look like. Click OK. Click Update. This might take a little while. So the screen typically goes black, and then you start with points, 1,000 points of light here, and eventually the viewport will render. So again, this is something you do at the very end of the drawing. You set your lighting options. You go make a cup of coffee. You go open mail. Maybe you go for a run. And hopefully, after not too long, you get a really nicely rendered viewport. So I'm going to stop the recording right now. We'll come back to this. Alright, we're back, and we've got some ambient lighting and our spotlight. So the ambient lighting you can control using some of the viewport controls, but if I wanted to go back and change that spotlight, I'll have to go back to the design layer. And select my light object there, and then I can decrease the amount of light. If I don't like that as much, again, I can change the type of light. If I want to take my chances with the directional light and be able to aim that light a little bit better. Or I want to aim it onto the countertop. Again, I can adjust its brightness, try and get rid of some of those shadows. I had better luck with the point light. There we go. So you have to play around depending on where you want the light, but it's common to have a couple of different light sources in your drawing to light up your whole drawing. If I wanted to see more detail on the cabinets, I'd put in some more overhead lighting, but you can really create some nice effects for your drawing. So go ahead and play around. This is just a very basic introduction to using light tools and lighting in Vectorworks and RenderWorks.